Good morning, everyone, and very much welcome to this first edition of the European Energy Efficiency Day from Brussels. My name is Monica Frassoni. I am the president of the European Alliance to Save Energy. The main idea behind this initiative is basically the fact of recognizing the massive importance of increasing energy savings in not only for our decarbonization agenda, but also to face the energy crisis that we are facing today, to reduce energy prices and electricity prices, and also to tap in what we consider to be a real potential that is not yet there. The idea of this Energy Efficiency Day is to put together the issue of energy savings with also other kinds of solutions for decarbonization, because we believe very much that we need an energy system that is performing and going in the right direction. Of course, bombs on Ukrainian cities tonight, the fact that we don't have yet an agreement at the level of the member states on what to do with the prices of electricity, and also the fact that there is a push to differentiate the gas supply is a little bit worrying for us. And therefore, another very big goal of this conference today is that brings together policymakers, industry, responsible, and also a civil society organization, is to underline more and more that we need to reduce our energy consumption, and we can do it at least as quickly as going to drill other gas supplies, or going to find other fossil fuels resources. So without further ado, I would like to start this first session that has the objective to put together and to discuss the synergy between two of the most important instruments for our decarbonization agenda and for dealing with climate change: renewables and energy efficiency. Very often these two solutions have been put a little bit against the other. We firmly believe that it is only by putting them together and by creating big synergies that it will be possible to fulfill our targets. Before that, I would like to say that this session is being recorded. It will be available on the EE's website after the event. We are live on Twitter. And if you have questions for our panelists, please use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, and I'm really happy to give the floor to Vice President of the Commission, Frans Timmermans, who did us the honor to be here with us this morning, just to ask you the same question. You know, how in the current context, in which a lot of people think that Europe has very little solution to offer tomorrow morning, you see the synergy between energy efficiency and renewables?
Well, thank you very much, President Frassoni, for allowing me to speak about this morning. I think your conference could not be more timely. This first European Energy Efficiency Day is very important, because we're not going to get anything done without a serious commitment to saving energy. It's very simple. There's no way you can bring down gas prices if saving energy, if using less gas, is not part of the solution. It's simply impossible. Any price cap, any other hocus pocus measure will not get you there if you're not at the same time substantially saving energy. And when we started to devise policies to get us out of the COVID crisis, we had to make sure that we would not abandon our efforts to respond to the climate crisis. And then we discovered that responding to the COVID crisis and addressing the climate crisis went hand in hand. And that's, I think, how we responded to it. And that's how we got also European solidarity organized very well. Now, since Putin decided to invade a peaceful neighboring country at the end of February, the world has changed. And the change is not temporarily. It's not just a change because of the war and just during the war. Even if the war would end today, the changes it has created will be permanent. and most importantly, the era of cheap fossil fuel is over for good. It will not come back. At the same time, the era of cheap renewable energy is real, and it's coming fast. But it's not coming fast enough to solve the problems this year and perhaps next year. We'll need a couple of years to get renewable energy up to scale to respond to the challenges of today. So in the meanwhile, the best way to act is to come together with our member states and especially our citizens and convince everyone that we need to save energy. Saving energy, not using energy is the cheapest energy, obviously. And this is not just something that is discussed between us here. I'm not trying to convince you because I don't need to. I know you agree with me, but it's something that I hear everywhere in Europe now. My mom talks about this. Her friends talk about that. On everyone's mind is how can I save energy? And the climate is not the reason for them to think this. There might be an afterthought about climate, but the main reason is that they can't afford to pay their energy bills anymore. And we need to react to that, and we need to convince our citizens that there are ways of saving energy. Now, structurally, saving energy is also becoming more interesting. I think if you look, for instance, just to give you one example, if you look at what has been done in innovation over the last, let's say, 5 years, if you look at today's heat pumps, for instance, they are so far removed from the original heat pumps that needed a lot of energy, a lot of electricity to provide a bit of energy. You needed to insulate your homes to almost absurd levels for it to work. That's no longer the case. And that's why so many people across Europe are scrambling to get solar panels on their roofs, to get the heat pumps installed, to get their homes insulated. And all of that, I think, is a popular movement. It's not just fostered by governments. That we should sort of mobilize even more. We should be part of that movement. And I think it is the only way to address the problems people are facing. Of course, we will need to use other measures in the next couple of years to help people face these unbearable energy costs. But then again, President Frassoni, I agree with you. We have to be careful that doesn't create a situation that we would step back from the need to save energy, to be more energy efficient, or to go into the energy transition. I believe that the war has increased people's sense of urgency for the energy transition that we need. We will move faster forward, I'm sure, and this is something that is shared by all of our member states. REPowerEU also raises the ambition of our targets in the Energy Efficiency Directive and in the Renewable Energy Directive. And we amended our efficiency performance of buildings proposal so that we can also there step up the deployment of solar technologies in our building stocks. We will push the co-legislators to agree to ambitious compromises for the revision of these three directives, which together constitute, I think, the three legislative pillars for our work in this area. And I see that things are moving forward quite well in the trilogues, in the discussions with the co-legislators. Now, we also increased our financial support for the transition. Again, here we didn't start from scratch, just to focus on one instrument among several that we have. Under the Recovery and Resilience Facility, member states planned a total of 64 billion euros for building renovation. So with REPowerEU, we decided to allocate new funds for energy transition spending under the same facility. We hope a swift agreement again here on the co-legislators will allow us to mobilize very rapidly on these resources. And we're still considering whether and how to further boost the money available under REPower to invest our way out of the crisis. So strengthening goals and increasing support are equally important in the need to respond to the challenges of how in the current circumstances in a world where supply constraints are pervasive and prices thus rising. Look at gas. Supply was already tight. I mean, demand was already higher than supply before Putin took out 10% of global gas supply. So the tension is still there, and the tension will increase if the Chinese economy picks up. So energy savings becomes even more urgent. So, and then also because it would reduce the risk of us being dependent on other foreign energy suppliers if we reduce our use of energy. And of course, the bills need to go down, and that's the main immediate urgency that we need to address. Now, we will find solutions in this energy crisis, but it's up to us to decide what sort of solutions. And they have to be sustainable solutions, because that's the only way you can combine the fight against the climate crisis with the fight against the energy crisis. We have to change our behavior. We have to become more energy efficient. We have to quickly increase the deployment of renewables, and we have to create the right legislative framework for this to happen much more quickly. So we have to make sure that we don't create a social drama in the short run, because poverty traps are there. I see people also, even in the country I know best, which is one of the richest in the EU, people with average incomes getting energy bills that are higher, monthly energy bills that are higher than their monthly incomes. I mean, it's completely gone crazy, and we need to address this, and we need to support our member states who address this. But let's make sure we address it in a way that is consistent with our long-term goals in terms of our energy transition. We need to make this a reality, and we need to do it very fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President. In this respect, I must admit that we are a little bit worried that in this instrument of repower being able to be used in RFF, this idea of getting rid of the do no significant harm principle, and the possibility of investing in all sorts of fossil infrastructure. But you know, the co-legislators are having a fight on that, and we hope that it goes in the best way. But I must admit that we are a bit worried that this idea of energy efficiency first has not been taken up, at least in this respect. Simone Mori, head of Europe in the Enel Group, which is one of the supporters of this day, even if they are energy providers, which I think is quite interesting.
Grazie, Monica. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, and I wish you 100% your words in your position. Let's say, when facing the crisis, there is, in some member states, it's also in Brussels, a strange narrative. In some way, blaming Brussels because we don't have enough gas to manage the reduction of gas dependency on Russia. So in some way, the basic idea, according to this narrative, is that we need more of what is killing us, which is very strange if you want. And we fully support the idea that there is no basic contradiction between the targets and the instruments of the energy transition. Basically, just let's synthesize all the package around this umbrella, and objective to be more resilient and more independent. We try to put together some data, because it's not very easy actually to have all the data together, but if we are not wrong, considering the ambition of the REPowerEU, we could, and taking for granted that we may deliver the targets of REPowerEU, we could reduce our dependency on fossil fuel imports on our primary energy platform by more than 35% by 2030, and basically more than nearly 60% of gas by 2030, which is very important. And this is basically related to two big interventions. The first one is energy efficiency. We have been discussing quite a lot. That's first and the most important priority action. If you are not wrong, probably the REPowerEU is forecasting a reduction of demand, the primary demand, by more than 170 million tons of oil equivalent, which is slightly less than what today Germany utilizes as energy demand, and a big jump in renewables. And we strongly believe that we may deliver, that we must deliver, and that all the action that will be put in place in the short term, and connecting to what Monica was saying about, the do not significant harm, it's clear that in the short term we have to do everything in order to manage the crisis. This is very important, and we are not happy to increase for this year the production of our coal plants, for example, but we must do that. But we don't want to divert our basic objective to the idea of getting rid of our coal plant by 2024, 2025, because we have to keep very clear in mind what is the short term, what is the structural modification. So we believe that REPowerEU is the right direction. We believe that we have to deliver. We believe the tools that Europe is trying to give to the member states are the good ones. Permitting is a major bottleneck in order to deliver the large renewable plants, and to go area identification is a good way to go. The full participation of our society is very important. Let me make an example of Italy, for example. Thanks to some tax release mechanism, the number of solar roofs connected with small batteries at the centralized level increased steeply. And during 2022, we are going to have more than 1.1 million small plants on the roof of Italians by the end of the year. And we may multiply this number with a very active participation, which will bring together to renewable penetration, demand optimization, and of course, energy efficiency electrification, because it's very easy then to connect this kind of investment to heat pumps. And we believe also that EPBD and EED are a very good framework to push this investment forward. A very last comment. I believe we are a little bit more disappointed by the difficulties in the co-decision in taking care of the emergency. For what we understood also yesterday in Prague, there was a quite harsh discussion. We are pretty much confident and sure that if we don't find a common way, Vice President Timmermans, to manage the impact of short-term impact of energy prices, especially gas prices, to the customers at the European level, this will bring to domestic measures fragmentation and chaos. So we strongly recommend the Commission to have a big and energetic role in promoting pan-European solutions. As you may imagine, being an Italian, I mean, we tend to be very close to the idea of proposed by our government initially of putting a cap on the TTF level, which we believe is pretty sound. But if you don't move in this direction, I believe that, reaction of the member states, we are present in many countries in Europe, we see chaos, fragmentation, overreaction, a big danger of not being able to go coherently in the proper direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to, and I'm very happy actually, to give the floor to Laurence Toubiana, who is the CEO of the European Climate Foundation, which is also one of the big supporters of the European Alliance to Save Energy. Laurence, vous avez la parole.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you again for your continuous work. I cannot agree more with what the two previous speakers in a way mentioned, in particular Vice President Frans Timmermans. On one side, I think we can rejoice that the first reaction of the EU was to double down on having the climate crisis addressed at the same time as a response to the war and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And that REPowerEU gave all the good signs, and that the solution was more renewable energy, saving energy, and really combine investment and reform to realize this priority. So I think the REPower plus the solidarity element. So I think the first response are absolutely the right ones. I think, as Simone Mori mentioned, we are now in a tension that is worrying, which is that energy security is now dominating the agenda in many countries, with a risk of fragmentation, or even for the moment, the fragmentation, it's not the risk, of every country wanting to go on its own. And of course, managing how much they can on the compensation, the solidarity within countries, but the quest, almost sometimes desperate, of new sources of fossil fuel. And that is, I think, the worrying signal. I see, and Vice President Timmermans was together with me at the EU-Africa Summit the beginning of the year. It was just before the war. But you saw already the tension between EU looking for fossil fuel and at the same time African countries saying you cannot just discard the possibility of investing in gas and oil in Africa, if at the same time you're asking for more. So I think we are at the crossroads. We have to double down, and that's why energy efficiency, it's absolutely crucial. We cannot do decarbonizing the EU economy without reducing our consumption of energy. There is no other solution. The production of renewable is not infinite, is not the solution. We cannot just still be in an extractive industry. So I think we should double down. The Fit for 55, again, is something we should reaffirm. We try to boost, of course, the numbers on renewable energy and on saving energy. And that's where the investment part should, in a way, prevail there, and not just only go for whatever solution of buying gas and oil, or building, which will be expensive, LNG terminals that, again, if we show more European solidarity, we will respond better to the short term, going together in the markets and having the same reaction we had with COVID at the end. So I think this is a really very important moment. But the sign that we have to do together, and we have to really build the energy efficiency together, is, I think, the more political signal we have all to get in our countries. So I don't want to push down, because I know Vice President has to leave very early. But really, I think if we can do whatever we can on the different segments of the society and the countries, to say there is no national solution to that. There is not really possibilities to, in a way, deploy compensation without understanding the impact on others, economy of EU. And again, it's a very fragile moment. So energy security is about the security as well on the cohesion and the solidarity. And I think an efficient energy saving investment would, of course, give all the benefits of it. So I will stop there.
Merci beaucoup, Laurence. I'm very pleased now to give the floor to Monique Goyens. We have an issue with our guest, David Ducarme. We're trying to understand whether Quentin can come in. But in the meantime, please, Monique Goyens, the Director General of BEUC, and she also gave a big support to this agenda. Although at the very beginning, when we spoke about energy efficiency, consumers were not that enthusiastic about all the measures and how much they would cost for the more vulnerable. And this is also a major, major shift. Please, Monique.
Yes, good morning to all. And I can reassure you, Monica, consumers are all enthusiastic about energy efficiency and energy savings. And I would really, from the consumer perspective, fully echo what Mr. Timmermans has said. The energy transition is urgent. And if I can add a consumerist angle to it, and it must happen from the bottom. It's the people who will, at the end of the day, need to invest into energy efficiency solutions, into renewables. And that is, first of all our surveys indicate that people are willing to do that. They catch the importance of the moment, and even surveys that have been undertaken after the war has broken out and after the energy bills have been skyrocketing, this wish to do something for the climate, for the energy transition is still the case for majority of consumers, although they are lost. And what is very important is that this is a signal also for policies to be rolled out so that it's a critical mass of consumers, of citizens that are on board, not only those that can afford to make upfront investments. And we also need to take into account that the energy transition is not the only transition that people have to support. We also need to support the food transition, changing our lifestyles when it comes to eating more healthier and sustainable diets, changing the way we travel, changing the way we buy textiles, changing the way we buy or not products. So it's quite, let's say, a challenge for people. It's not their full-time job. And so what we would like to say is that the challenge and the opportunity is really to design European policies that can make it possible to trickle down the policy decisions to the people themselves. This is really something that is important. People need to invest into energy efficiency in their homes, in their appliances, appliances that are less more energy efficient, but also into your renewables. And there are still some barriers that need to be taken down. we welcome all the initiatives. There are a huge number of initiatives that are being, for the moment, discussed and also implemented thanks to the European Union. I just would like to stress a few elements that still need to be mentioned. First of all, one of the major and the most known barrier is, of course, the upfront investment. In the long term, people will all win because energy will be cheaper, but you need to have this upfront investment. And there, green finance, as it's being called, is still not mainstreaming. And what we observe is some sort of a feeling of frustration, because there is a lot of talks about billions of, money made available for energy efficiency investments, but it is not visible for the people. So how can we mitigate the barrier of this upfront investment? There are really solutions, but we need to mainstream them. That is really important, because that is the hurdle number one. It is also very important for us to realize that it is not only about the energy bill of the average consumer. It is about also, it's a social policy, because when you tackle also for the less affluent households energy efficiency in their homes, you in fact get them out of energy poverty, because the energy bill is a huge part of their household budget. If you get them out of energy poverty, you get them out of poverty. And this is really something that is in terms of trying to get out of the silos between energy policy and social policies at national. There is in fact an investment that can be made in order to also then save on social allowances. And I would also like to stress, it is not sufficiently mentioned, it is also a question of health. More energy efficiency, more renewables means less pollution and more healthier environments. And that's also a cost that is sometimes underestimated. On top of the upfront investment that needs to be tackled, there are, yes?
Just if you can go to the conclusion, yes, and we'll come back to the same issues later.
Yes, okay, yes, okay. Then what I would like to say maybe that for most of the people currently, taking that step towards more energy transition is a headache, because they are lost, lack of information, lack of money, lack of trustworthy advice. So we really would like policymakers and those who roll out the policies to take the people by the hand and supporting them in taking those steps. I stop here, otherwise I talk for hours. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Monique. And I would like now to give the floor to Quentin Galin from Crown Insulation, because David Ducarme, who is the Deputy Group CEO and Group COO, had some issues. I'm not really sure what, but Quentin, please. You also have some issues. Okay, so you can't intervene. Right. So I'm so sorry, because we worked on this panel with Knauf, which is one of our founders. I just wanted to give then the floor to Vice President Timmermans, underlying once again this issue of time. I am not very sure, really, talking on time, that investing in new gas infrastructures is taking less time than doing stuff much more, let's say, with much more energy, if you allow me, on energy efficiency, which is really lagging a bit behind. But maybe I'm wrong. You have a lot of figures to give us, I'm sure. But just to manifest our worry about this time discussion, do now, do after, because what you do now, unfortunately, is having a massive impact in what you will do less. And in terms of investment in houses, installation, for example, etc., is not something that you can postpone forever. And if you make these two things compete, now gas infrastructure, gas or fossil fuel infrastructure, and then later maybe other costly, as Laurence and Monique said, investment, then I think that we are not going in the right direction. But
well, you know, let me address this issue straight away. I don't share your worries on do no significant harm being sidelined. I think we have given very, very specific possibilities to indeed invest in some infrastructure still necessary for fossil fuels. You know, to be very blunt, if because of Russia's behavior, we get blackouts in some countries, or people sitting in the cold during the winter, then we can forget about any other agenda in transition. So we cannot stick to our long-term agenda if we don't really address the very short-term worries our citizens have, and some of our member states have. because some, if a country like Slovakia, if it is cut off Russian gas today, it will need solidarity with from other member states to make sure they're not in the cold. And in some areas of Europe, for that to be able to be done, we need some extra infrastructure. Now, if you then also prepare that infrastructure to be suitable to carry green gases later, mainly hydrogen, then the investment is only partly for the fossil fuel, but can also take you into the post-fossil fuel era. So that's sort of our thinking. But let me also specifically address the issue that was raised about the immediate and what Europe should be doing, because I think this is extremely, extremely important. First of all, I think, frankly, if the reason why we don't have measures is because member states don't agree. It's not because the Commission hasn't made proposals. It's because member states can't come together on this. So I personally believe the Commission could be even bolder in making proposals, and then it will be up to member states to see whether they embrace them or not. So if we all agree that energy consumption reduction is essential also to bring the price down, then perhaps we should envisage having mandatory reduction targets applied by all member states. I would not be against that. Let's say 15%. That would really solve the problem. Because if you do that and you bring the price down to about 100 euros, then also you help our industries that are now suffering. And some industries are even considering closing down and leaving to the United States. And that would be tremendously negative for our societal development and for employment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think mandatory reduction of consumption could be envisaged. And then secondly, which I find incredible that we haven't done it so far, the platform we have created should also do collective buy-in of energy on the markets and not leave this to individual member states. The price difference between gas in Europe and gas in Asia cannot be explained only by market differences. Part of the explanation is also because individual European countries are bidding against each other on the market, which drives the price up. And so I would be an advocate of a situation where we decide together with the industry, because you need to do it together with the industry, that from now on we will do collective European buy-in. But if you do that, you also have to have a system that you have a collective agreement on how you distribute the gas that you buy in, so that nobody is left in the cold. So this is quite far-reaching, but I believe these are the only things that will really have an effect. Reducing the consumption, collective buy-in, both will have a mitigating, a reducing effect on the price, and we need to bring the price down. And that is, I believe, where we could go. These are my answers to the main questions that were put on the table.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Timmermans. I think that we could go on forever discussing about this, and I'm sure that this is basically what you're going to do in the rest of your day and your weeks. I really do hope that there is an agreement that is found. I believe that there are also other issues that can be done to push for more energy savings and making them more credible and more immediate. And that is the reason why we organize this Energy Efficiency Day, just to show that this is possible, is timely, and can be done in conjunction with other agenda points of our work.
Absolutely. Also what Ms. Schoyens was saying, we need to come up with new legislation leading to more energy efficient consumer products. Yeah. It has to be reusable, it has to be repairable, it has to be recyclable. And all of that is part of this agenda to create a circular economy, and our consumers would hugely benefit from this. So it's a wider agenda, but the thing in politics is if you don't address the immediate crisis, the long-term projects will die. And on the other hand, in politics, there's always a risk that the immediate crisis drives out the long-term policy. So I'm trying to navigate through that we stick to our long-term policy, but that we are visible in addressing the short-term crisis. If we're not credible on that, citizens will not believe us also on the long-term agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope you will find the silver bullet or those silver bullets to find this question of, to address this question of the prices, because I believe that there is still some way to go, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Vice President, and I hope that this will not be the last time we meet. Thank you so much for your contribution, and let's move to the next part. Actually, let's go on discussing about what we have been discussing. And I would like, first of all, to give the floor to Quentin Galland. I'm so sorry that there were these technical issues, but unfortunately, the Vice President had to leave now. But I would like to give you the floor, if it works now, to give your contribution to this very important discussion. Considering that your company does insulation products, among many other things, the fact of putting together renewables is certainly very important. We can't hear you. He has a 10 seconds delay. Okay. We can't hear you now. What is happening? Okay, Quentin, we cannot hear you. So I suggest.
Now, is it working?
Okay, Quentin, we cannot hear you. So I suggest. Go ahead.
Now, is it working?
Okay, Quentin, we cannot hear you. So I suggest. Go ahead.
Now, is it working?
Okay, Quentin, we cannot hear you. So I suggest. Go ahead.
Now, is it working?
Quentin, can you put up or mute your mic?
Now, is it working?
Put on mic your mic. Possiamo chiudere il suo microfono? Okay, sorry, we really have some issues. We will come back later, but I would like to go back to the major discussion. I think that we were all listening to what Vice President talked about. He was probably not dealing so much with the issue of the synergy with renewables, but I think that his message was pretty clear. So I would like to go back to what we were the main topic of our discussion is today, and that is the synergies between renewables and energy efficiency. Because, as you know, energy efficiency is still the Cinderella of this conversation, of this discussion. And the question of putting them together as a synergy is really, really key. And I would like to ask to go back to the same order, and unless somebody tells me that the issue with Quentin is solved. And maybe Simone, if you can go back to some of the issues you said to me, Vice President, but being a little bit more precise about how, from your very important point of view, you see this question of the synergies between the two at European level, and also to solve the different worries that also Vice President Timmermans was underlying very much.
Yeah, maybe let me first of all to go back to the issue of solidarity. Sorry, it's not your question is, but it is a very important point. I think that we all underevaluated the need to manage the transition in a smart, practical, and some way not ideological way. Transition is a complicated process. Every big transition is a complicated process, which needs probably also to take into consideration some redundancy. I go back to your point about gas investment infrastructure. That you know, and very well. And again, making a practical example, we are shutting down the few large coal plants we have in Italy, and we are building smaller gas plants in order to guarantee the kind of backup, because we may not just jump from 1 to 3 without going through. So some redundancy is an inherent part of every kind of transition. This is very important. And we must be practical, not ideological. No? So and probably we didn't consider that. And what we are paying today is for sure some contradiction between the good and the shared targets of, for example, investing in renewable, and the difficulties in accepting investment on the ground in the territories, etc. This is a big issue, but also the fact that we didn't created a coherent frame for the phasing in, phasing out of new investment. And that should be done a very important part of the transition anyway. That is now on the table, and again, I believe that there are all the tools to be be promoted. Synergy between what Brussels may do and what member states may do is very important. We believe that especially on the side of permitting, being a leap forward and being guaranteed by the new legislation proposed and implemented by the European Commission. Again, going back, Monica, to the topics we were mentioning, the solar roofs, more decentralized batteries, heat pumps. Basically, there is a very strong drive, and for example, the barriers in terms of permitting are really a minor problem. That's the reason why the process of replacement is being accelerated in many countries. I think that the job has to be done, especially at local level. I think that there is a big effort that has to be put in place by government. And I think that the speed is very, very important, because time is really now. I mean, now is time where our solution, what we have been proposing for the last 5-10 years, is exactly what is needed in order to manage the crisis. So I think time is now. We have to accelerate. Again, we must be very practical. We must overcome the difficulties we have, and we have to work hard. I think this is the most decisive part on the value on the supply chain, because all the technologies of the energy transition, and especially the technology of the decentralized model of the energy transition, have to be in some way reinsured. I try to utilize this under a kind of geopolitical point of view. I mean, it's clear that what is happening at the global level is undermining the global value chains. And then the need to reinsure and to become, to bring back the technological leadership in this technology, including batteries. Something is happening in Europe. Europe is building large battery factories, on solar panels. We are now investing, and we got more than 100 million euros for scaling up our factory of high-tech, high-efficiency solar panels in Sicily. I think this is very, very, very important, because for two reasons. First one is that because we are sure that the decarbonization, energy efficiency, the new technologies are good for the environment, are good for the energy security, but they are also good for our society in terms of GDP, jobs, etc. But we have to do that by ourselves. But also we have to start to rely less and less on import coming from countries that whose reliability was taken for granted until probably 6 months ago, but that today we may not more be sure that they may guarantee what we need in order to proceed with our plans. Thank you, Mani.
I am muted. Thank you very much indeed, and I would like to give the floor to Laurence, because I know that she has to leave before. And I just wanted to know from her point of view also, what are the actions that you saw more effective to put these two agendas together, and also what you made of the proposal intervention of Vice President. And then I will try again to give the floor to Quentin.
Thank you, and I hope this problem we could listen to Quentin. Absolutely, that's a very important point of view. Well, the action, it's as we have all said, we are a crossroad moment where on one side, the dominance of the energy security is putting the climate crisis, and in a way, all the structural investment measures maybe on the side, because we'll spend a lot of money. I just look at the numbers. For France, for example, is 45 billion for 2023 that is expected just to, in a way, mitigate the cost of the fossil fuel for everybody, consumer, industry, etc. The level of these fossil fuel subsidies are skyrocketed. And that, of course, go totally in contradiction with the investment we need to put in renewable energy and energy efficiency, which, of course, are really capital intensive. As Monique said, we need to help, in particular, the low-income household to insulate their homes. We need to be much better, including as a supply chain of all what is material and everything, and totally agree with what she said. So on one side, I think is to recall that investment, the compensation we are putting in fossil fuel can derail the direction of travel we have reaffirmed for Fit for 55 and 2030, and hopefully we'll get there on the 45 share of electricity by 2030 from renewable. The second point is, I think, Monique's point of putting the citizen at the center, it's the only solution, because we need a transformation of the society. It should be, and for that, you have the citizen to own the solution. And I think Monique, as Vice President Timmermans mentioned, of course, there is a movement there in the society where we should accelerate that movement and give, for example, where there is a lot of conflict sometimes between installing wind turbine, but you see that as soon as you go to the organization of energy communities, or the local communities own the solution of renewable energy, the politics around that are totally different. So that's very clear, not derailing the investment path. And of course, the question now will be to concentrate the compensation to the the one we have to get out the energy poverty. So not everybody, because that will encourage finally still a high consumption of fossil fuel. And then in a way, and to give some elements, and we have been working with a Cambridge economics study on the benefit of all this. And you see, it's impressive how, and even the model was done and in a way before the war. So imagine now where energy bills are just skyrocketing. The benefit of the cuts in the energy bill by 2050, at least with the previous war price, it was already, you could cut the energy bills by 50 if we invest in energy efficiency. And of course, and in particular, making consumers benefit from the low cost of renewable energy, because for the moment they are not receiving it, they are not even seeing, beyond of course the energy communities, they are not seeing the benefits of that. So they don't know that finally we could produce electricity in a much safer way. I do think on top of that we should really put the elements that, again, concentrating the solidarity fund on really low-income household. Same time, understand, for example, hydrogen and heat pumps for heating, or by all these some renewable energy processes could really cut the indoor pollution we are seeing nowadays. And gas is one of the problems where finally we could have other solutions. And then when finally the issue of heating has been probably undervalued in all that discussion. And of course, it was the idea that we could have permanent provision of gas. Gas is a very important factor for heating in many homes. Where in reality, both for collective solution of heating and individual ones, we could absolutely shift to electricity in most cases. And of course, the success, I'm looking at the Polish situation these days, there is really an enormous appetite to go to heat pumps in Poland these days. And it's interesting, a country who has really focused on coal and gas is now really calling for electrification of many of the activities. So this is, in a way, my first recommendation. Look really at the recovery funds that are left, orient them to the investment that are needed to energy efficiency and renewable energy in particular, and connection between European countries, because if not, this cannot be achieved. And at the same time, really trying to, in a way, make consumers benefit really from the lower cost of renewable energy, and really helping the society to really do the energy efficiencies that appear too costly. And when I look at the budget for energy efficiency and insulation compared to the budget for the subsidies on fossil fuel, says it's not an order of magnitude different from these two numbers. And I think that should be a very strong message now, because this money would disappear in a way, and in a way be a rent paid to fossil fuel companies or fossil fuel exporters, and not finally for the benefit of people. I stop there, Monica, and thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, also for the clarity of your messages. And indeed, this question of resources is where do they go and how they are spent. Somehow of despairing messages that we are getting from people and also from policymakers. And I want to underline again this issue of time. You know, whether it is really true that differentiating gas supply is shorter than go to a more convinced energy efficiency investment. And because frankly, I'm not very convinced that to use the same kind of urgency and the same kind of resources for energy efficiency would not have a better result than going around the world and paying huge bill by not being able, unfortunately, and I must say, Vice President Timmermans confirmed it today, by not being able to act on the structure of the market. And unfortunately, to be for today, and I believe that this is somehow of a mistake. Kenta from Knauf Insulation, can we try again? I don't see him anymore. He has a 10 seconds delay, so Kenta? Okay, good. So not good, because I'm very sad he cannot really take part, but I would like now to give the floor to Monique Goyens, and just to comment on what we have been saying and what you make of it, and probably also to give a couple of ideas of how we could proceed together on this work, as Laurence and Simone did.
Yeah. Maybe thank you very much, Monica, and let me give you some sort of a consumer check, because we speak about the people-centric energy transition, and it is very important not to assume that this is going to happen like this, just because to tell the people that they are at the center. Because fundamentally, when you look at consumers, how they are, they find energy boring. They don't want to spend a lot of time making energy decisions. It's not like when you choose a car or when you choose a smartphone. Some people just spend hours and days on that. So it is very important to work with the people like they are. And that means that if you want to engage them into the energy transition, you need to make this transition easy, meaning easy to understand information, not too complex offers, available information in plain language, not in acronyms, which is also a specialty of the sector. Second, you need to make it fun, meaning use the digital tools in order to gamify some of the energy management tools that can be helping consumers in saving energy, and again, make it affordable. So the cheap solution will be the one taken up by the consumers, and that's the price signal that is very important. Now, when it comes to the benefits of combination of renewables and energy efficiency from the consumer perspective, this is of course a no-brainer. This is of course sure. People, and I mentioned it already in my first remarks, they will have lower bills, they will have available income for the less affluent households. It will be good for the environment, and people want to contribute to a better environment, and it will be good to the health. Where I would like to be a little bit more granular is, it is very important for people to have the information that they need for this combination between energy efficiency and renewables. There are some myths going around, for example, that you need deep retrofitting in order to be able to install heat pumps. That is not necessarily the case. So you really need to take the time to have tailor-made advice to the people, depending on where they live, on how their house is already insulated, in order to see whether they need additional retrofitting before they can. And on the other hand, it's also very important to have a timing. So sometimes you need first to engage into insulating your roof before you put the solar panels on that roof, because otherwise it would be some sort of wrong planification. So it's important to make that type of information and advice available for consumers.
Thank you, Monique. Quentin, I understand that the problem is solved, and this is actually very good, because Monique touched on the question of insulation, and I think it's very timely that you come in now. So please, you have the floor. We are all ears.
Thank you, Monica. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So good news and good morning, everyone. Sorry for that lengthy delay in joining this session, and I'm sorry I could not hear most of the intervention because of technical issues, and I'm apologizing as well on behalf of David Ducam, who, because of the same issues I encountered, could not join. So thanks very much. Knowing that I've missed most of the intervention, I'll try to piggyback on what Monique said. So obviously, I think it's important that we are in an energy crisis. We all know this. There is no silver bullet to this crisis, and it is there to stay. Whether we like it or not, we'll have to find short and long-lasting solutions. Where we believe that there is no silver bullet, we believe that insulation is a good place to start. If we look at insulation, we know that it's the right fit in order to decrease the energy demand for the building. And if we step by step roll out massively towards energy solutions such as heat pumps that can help decarbonizing the building stock, that can help us decreasing our reliance on fossil fuel, we know as well that we will hit a massive problem that we don't have at this stage the energy capacity to feed stock at European level that will be using those heat pumps. And so we're left with a Damocles sword upon our shoulders, where we either look at this and we just go for it, or we look at it from a long-term perspective. And we know we've run calculations within CNAF and CNAF Energy Solutions that tell us two things, is that if we look at this energy transition, it is important that we look at the twin trends. Heat pumps and insulation will help, the insulation part will help the heat pump to function in the right way at a cost optimal, effective way that will decrease the cost for consumers. And we know right now that energy prices are peaking, and this is there to stay as well. So do we want to look at this for consumers on the long run who will have to pay a price for running their heat pump because the energy price are too high, but also because the heat pump is not as cost effective as it should be? Can be a solution in that regard. But we also know that if we go towards heat pumps, just to take that solution I'm focusing on this morning, is that we will need the energy capacity, the electric energy capacity to feed those heat pumps. And right now, we don't have that at European level. So we will also be left with a high fee for our society to pay energy capacity that we don't have. And we've run calculations that tell us two things, is that tells one key thing here, is that if we invest in insulation first, when rolling out heat pump, we will have to invest to a lesser extent to energy capacity. And that is a win-win for our society, but as well for consumers who see the dear price of the energy crisis and of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So simply put, there is no silver bullet. We need to look long-term. We need to see, as Frans Timmermans said, and unfortunately, that's the only bits and pieces I could get earlier in this meeting, is that we need to really look into energy efficiency, but we need to look at it on how we can best plug energy efficiency solutions, such as insulation, in order to make sure that we are future-proofing our energy system for the long run.
Very much, Simone. I would like to come back to you briefly. First, because there is an interesting question that has been put by Oliver Young, who speaks about the issues that have to do with the training of people who are able to work on both renewables in terms of installment, but also on energy efficiency solutions. And he says that basically we will have to use the same emergency, drive that was used during the COVID pandemia. Even if, of course, if you speak with nurses and doctors, they will tell you that not enough has been done. And this is, of course, very sad. But just to understand from your perspective as a big industrial actor, if you find the same issues, and maybe you can tell us something about the Tango project, which has a very nice name, by the way.
No, absolutely. On the first point, I fully agree. I mean, it's clear that the need to accelerate the process requires a societal change. And today, I think all Europe is not ready. I mean, we are not, the large companies as a business model, have a business model which is not naturally, let's say, coherent with the idea of promoting a super fast acceleration of decentralized investments, because this is what we are talking about. Investments in energy efficiency at the level of households, services, small and middle-sized enterprises, again, decentralized photovoltaic generation. And there is a problem of business model, which is very different than what we are used to do, which is basically large centralized investment also in renewables. The second one is that very often there is a lack of specialized staff able to manage, again, we don't have the time to fix this problem in an incremental way. So as a company, we are working out in several countries. We are, for example, proposing a crash program of training for young people, working together with high schools, universities, and retraining, reskilling. And I think that this idea is very much related to what the Commission proposed a couple of years ago when it introduced the concept of just transition. I mean, this is what we need. We need also to have skilled people able to manage the transition. And those people have to be found among young generations by creating the correct training courses and tracks, but also by reskilling people and our colleagues who are inside the company, the large utilities, but are used to cover different roles and different and to have different skills. On Tango project, Tango is an economist, is an Italian photovoltaic gigafactory. We are very proud of it. President von der Leyen mentioned this project during his speech at the State of the Union. And this is a very important project because what we know is the largest project trying to, again, to build an European supply chain for photovoltaic panels. This is a very high technology. The project is a big one, 200, where we want to scale up the current production, which is 200 megawatt. We want to go up to probably by investing 600 megawatt, 600 million euros. We got a grant from the European Commission by more than 110 million euros, and that's, you know, that's a recognition of how good is this move. But we believe that this is a priority for Europe. I think that this is a priority. The Commission is understanding that. I think we found more and more attention on the topic of working together, creating, you know, the right set of competences and also the finances in order to create a competitive European supply chain for these key technologies. We don't have to take for granted the fact that panels are coming from China. Not only, again, high-tech, high-efficiency panels, but also in some way the baseline, because what we need now is an incredible amount of investment. The REPowerEU is projecting more than 3 times, you know, the installation that we have today, also considering the repowering, the substitution of obsolete panels, and this may be not just carried out by importing technology from elsewhere. So this is a priority. We are very proud to be, you know, pioneers in this process, and we are also very positive on the fact that we are finding an increasing level of interest and attention on the side of Brussels institutions. But again, the problem is going from the idea, which is, I would say, we are all aligned on the ideas to the practice in order to deploy, to deliver in a short period of time. This is what we need.
Sorry, Monique, you saw that there is a question directed to you. Maybe you can, I can just formulate it quickly. Basically, what is the good balance between supporting families and convincing about going energy efficient and rest? You partly already answered, but maybe you can be a little bit clearer, and maybe the same question can be addressed to the other 2 panelists before we go to conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very important question. And as has been mentioned earlier, for the moment, people are, consumer spending is going down because people are afraid there is a crisis, there is an economic crisis, there is a risk of recession. So if you want people to invest while they cannot really, while their energy bill is at the same level of their mortgage credit, it's a problem. So we really need to address this upfront investment. But not only. First of all, I think you need to cut the red tape. That's one of the issues. It takes 3 years in Bulgaria to set solar panels on your roof. This should be totally rearranged so that you can immediately, have the benefit of your investment. And also you need to know where you can find the information, because it's so complicated sometimes to know whether you are entitled to subsidies, what you need to do in order to receive some, let's say, public funding support. We are asking for a one-stop shop, so that in all, at local level, in municipalities, for example, there would be a trustworthy independent advice that tells people how to do it, because many people don't know where to start even. Then when it comes to the investment itself, what we see is, I may already mention it, but just to give it a little bit more detail. So people cannot really get 20,000 or 50,000 euro out of their pocket. There are subsidies, but they are all very often related to taxes. That means that you need first to take that money out of your bank account, and then maybe 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years later, you get that money back from, or part of the money back from public authority. It should be turned around. You should, pre-finance, help people pre-financing their investment. And then also, I think that the financial sector has a major role to play in finding creative solutions. They exist already. Instead of giving you a mortgage credit or a credit for those investments, there can be, pay as you save schemes or on-bill schemes where you don't really need to face an additional, let's say, credit, but where you can indeed, depending on the reduction in your energy bill, you can transfer that reduction of your bill to your funding body. So there needs a little bit of creativity in order indeed to make it possible for people to engage into that investment.
Yes, thank you very much. There is also for you, Quentin, a question that goes a little bit in the same direction. I just wanted to mention the fact that in 2021, subsidies for fossil fuels reached 697 billions in 2021, up from 362 in 2020. And this, and exactly as what we were talking about before, the term and long term can be extremely costly, exactly because the investments that we need for transition, and in particular for energy efficiency, are important, but it is really make me cry to see how much money is going to pay expenses that will have really no future. So there must be a better balance, and probably Quentin can give us some ideas about that.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Susan, for your question. I think again, there is no silver bullet. Now the question is, how can we make sure that this transition is a fair transition for our citizens? If we take back what I was saying before, clearly having investments into energy capacity, this is something that we pay as society. Now we could maybe look at energy efficiency from a complete different angle. Why not as well looking at including energy efficiency as part of the energy mix that member states are reporting? This could also help driving investments towards energy efficiency. That is one long-term way of looking at it. But now looking as well at investments that we as citizens have to roll out for insulating our places. Well, right now, there's a clear interest from citizens and consumers at large to look at insulating their places because they see the costs that energy price brings on their wallet. So now the idea is to say, well, how can we support those investments to make sure that they are timely placed, and that also that they do perform renovation retrofits that will be impactful for citizens. And there, One key tool that we see is obviously the minimum energy performance standards that are currently being discussed in the context of the Energy Performance of Building Directive. We know that there are some trends, both European Parliament and the Council, trying to shift the way MEPs are being approached. We believe, nonetheless, of what is at the end of the day, that there should be clear trajectory, clear directions, and an ambitious way of looking at how we can phase in renovation efforts to decrease the energy demand of the building stock. That is at least what the EPBD can help driving that and phasing it. That will give clarity to consumers, homeowners, but as well to businesses, because we will be able to look at it from a business and plan the way forward. But that will also help maybe in a way, from a market standpoint, help addressing some of the shortages that we have from a skills standpoint. Now, also, what we need in order to decrease these investments is that if we have subsidy schemes at national level that are being plugged and then deplugged, this is not helpful. What is important is to have long-lasting subsidy schemes that, even if the amount of money is little, it's best to make sure that the amount of money is stable over time, and that we citizens can know exactly what to expect from that subsidy scheme. But it's also important to make sure that there is stability beyond political changes. And obviously that is a tough one, I admit that, but it's important, because if we switch those subsidies, this will not help. And beyond that, why as well, from a societal perspective, not look at energy efficiency renovation as a way to also feed our energy system? What I mean here is that why we are paying as society for energy capacity, why aren't we as well paying in a different way for energy renovation retrofits that will be part of the energy system? Because we're moving to a decarbonized and electrified economy, this will be more and more important to look at the building stock and make sure that the building stock is well integrated. So Suzanne, the question is quite a tough one, in a sense that there is no one answer and one straight answer. I think it needs to come from multiple directions. And these are few ideas that we're putting on the table. And we hope with the EPBD that we will set the directive in a right way for the decarbonization of the building stock.
Thank you very much. We still have a couple of minutes. I don't know if Simone or Monique would like to say something in conclusion before we move to the next session and thank everyone.
Monique?
Simone? Yeah.
No, go Monique. Go.
Monique.
So just very quickly to say that I fully support what Quentin just said about the minimum performance standards. For the moment, people are not sufficiently well informed about the performance of their building. So fully agree that there needs to also be a higher level of ambition so that people can take investment decisions on energy efficiency in good knowledge of what is the standing of their building. Just wanted to support that.
Simone?
Yeah, well, 100% agreement with that. We high ambition and practical implementation of the standards we have is very important to our citizens, that the things are included in these provisions and the same they may utilize in order to reduce their bill in the short term. Because that's why we don't have to divert that tension and the sense of mobilization of people in order to focus the next steps, the next action on what is needed in order both to decarbonize, to become more efficient and independent in terms of self-production. But that's both for citizen and a small and middle-sized enterprise, and to reduce the bill. That's very, very important. There is a momentum and we don't have to miss the momentum.
Quentin, the last word.
So I think here we have clearly opportunities ahead of us to set right any policies that we'll have in front of us in order to, for a long-lasting decades, we'll have a long-lasting decade in front of us to set it right, to set our energy system in the right way. We either look at it right now, we know that we have had dependencies on Russian gas, and we know that we should no longer trust that player worldwide. Are we looking at trying to create other dependencies for the next decade, I don't think this would be doing us right for the citizens and as well for us ourselves. So it's important here to look at what solutions we can bring onto the market, what kind of policy framework we can develop in order to make sure that the next decade ahead, we are shifting away from dependencies that will prevent the decarbonization of the building stock. So clearly we need to be ambitious. We need to put ourselves all working and getting the hard work done in order to get there. And I hope that the outcome of the PBD negotiations will get us towards the right direction. And I think it's really up to policymakers to put themselves in a foot towards where we want to be in 10 years. What do we want to do with the building stock in 10 years in order to fade away from the dependencies that we've had for the past decades?
Yes, thank you very much to all. I saw that there is another issue, another question that arrived last minute, but indeed the question of the participation, let's say, of citizens at the same time, not to be taken away by the argument of urgency, really key. And I would like to conclude this very first panel to our energy efficiency Europe. We absolutely need an alliance, a political synergy, a technical and practical implementation of this synergy between renewables and energy efficiency solution. This is not fully the case today. And I really think also after Vice President Timmermans that we want to thank for having been here with us, that the solution to energy prices is not yet very much here, and the worrying signals about going on with giving lots of money to fossil fuels and then say that we don't have money to do the right solutions is still there. And therefore, we really need to double our effort to make this urgency even more clear in the mind of policymakers, but also of citizens. And I am very sure that our panelists will be in the first row in trying to do that actually together. And I would like to thank you very much for your contribution. And we are going now to a pause of about 10-15 minutes before going to the second session, which is touching a very important point, and that is reaping the benefits of the water energy nexus. We saw this summer how important it is to have a good management of water resources. And this is also an energy issue, and it's definitely an efficiency issue. Thank you so much again, Simone, Monique, Quentin. Thank you to Laurence and to Vice President.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica.
Ciao, and see you in 10-15 minutes. Bye-bye. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.